Bright days ahead for Conan the Barbarian. Or are they? Let's find out. Hi everybody, and welcome to another video. Now this is an interesting piece of information for each and every single fantasy aficionado and fantasy fan and ferocious readers such as myself, although there are a couple of things that have to be taken into consideration first before we say that yes, it is a huge success for this particular publisher. So what we're looking at right now is an article by Bounding Into Comics that says Jim Zub's new Conan the Barbarian breaks sales records for Titan Comics. Now, to get you into the context a little bit, Conan the Barbarian has been adapted into the comic book graphic novel format for a long time. First way back then by Marvel Comics, and then it went to Dark Horse Comics for a bit, about 10 years I think, and then went to Marvel again. And now the Titan Comics, they have the license to publish the American version of the Conan the Barbarian comic books. Now in Europe, we've got the Cimmerian, Conan the Cimmerian graphic novels, Les Bandes Dessinées, which are adaptations of the short stories and novellas by Robert E. Howard, and are also, come with like the entire short stories themselves, written in prose, the original short stories by Robert E. Howard. And so we have to take into consideration one thing. First, I know that this topic might not be popular very much because people don't read anymore in general, and especially people don't read comic books that much today. Definitely not as much as they used to in the past. People have moved to different media. People are enjoying streaming services and TV shows there, and maybe films and video games and things like that. Definitely not literature as much as it used to be. I still do. I am still a voracious reader, so you can be goddamn sure I will get this comic book and review it for you once it comes out. And that's the thing. That's the thing that needs to be considered right now before we move on and get into the article. If I'm not wrong, and the practices of the American mainstream comic book industry are the same as they were, as they have always been, the numbers that we have right now are the numbers of the comic books that have been sold to distributors and to retailers, not to fans at homes. Those are not the numbers of the comic books sold to readers that would take the copy to their homes and read them. Because the comic book, as of making of this video, has not come out yet. It's going to come out tomorrow. So, we will see about the true numbers and the true quality of the comic book when it actually comes out. And the second thing that has to be taken into consideration is that another practice of the mainstream comic book industry today is to make like at least 10, sometimes 10, sometimes 5, sometimes more, variant covers of the individual comic book issues of the floppies, as they are called. And so collectors sometimes buy 5 or 6 copies, sometimes 2, like multiple copies of the same comic books because they have just different variant covers. So the numbers are then boosted a little bit. And the third thing we have to take into consideration is that this is number 1 of another series of Conan the Barbarian. I have read my share of Conan the Barbarian comic books and graphic novels, but I have been doing a little bit of a research in preparation for reading this one because I was looking for it and I didn't know it hasn't come out yet. It will come out tomorrow. And I was astonished to find out how many times Conan the Barbarian issue 1 came out. At Marvel, at Dark Horse, at Marvel, at Dark Horse, and then at the European publishers. It's just extraordinary how many number ones there were. And the practice of today's US comic book industry is to reboot a comic book series multiple times in like a couple of years, over and over again, because the number one always has the biggest sales, and it boosts the numbers and it boosts the sales, and then they go down again. We will see what will happen with this one. So shall we dig in once we have established everything that needed to be known? So Jim Zub's new Conan the Barbarian breaks sales records for Titan Comics. Titan Comics announced their upcoming Conan the Barbarian issue 1 by Jim Zub and Roberto de la Torre became the most sold comic in Titan's comic history. Now, once again, we have to think about the fact that these copies have not been sold to fans yet. In a press release, the publisher proclaimed confirmed sales of the initial print exceeded 80,000, making Conan the largest selling issue in Titan Comics' history. With the second printing planned and third printing probable, final sales for this debut issue are expected to exceed 100,000 copies. Titan Publishing director Ricky Clayton celebrated, "We are so thrilled with the numbers on issue 1. Our staff and partners at Heroic Signatures worked extremely hard to make the best Conan comic ever, and I think we have achieved that." Now, that's not a bad strategy if you want to sell a product, to say that it's the best ever. Definitely much better than say, "Oh, everybody is included here. We will make you all feel seen." Finally, after decades of Conan's existence, now let's just, you want to sell me your product? Show it to me. Make it look good. Make it sound good. Be a good salesman. That's a good strategy there. He added, "Jim Zub's and Roberto de la Torre's creation is barbarically perfect." That's even better. This masterpiece combined with the unbelievable support of our distribution, Dynamite Comics, and retail partners made this launch a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for all of us. And it continues. These sales numbers come after Heroic Signatures moved the Conan the Barbarian license from Marvel Comics to Titan Comics. Heroic Signatures president Frederick Malmberg explained the decision to move to Titan Comics back in April to Midnight's Edge Andre Einherjar. It sort of started leaking out that we were not going to be with Marvel for much longer, and we were approached by a number of publishers who then wanted to collaborate, co-publish, or take out a license. But at that point, we were already, nope, we're going to do another license. We'll do this ourselves. We want to be true to Robert E. Howard. We don't want to be bound by any comics code or anything like that. Interesting. I am more and more intrigued. So we were very quickly ended up actually with Titan Comics, he continues. "I know the owner and founder, Nick Landau, and his wife Vivian very well." I love the name Vivian. It sounds very posh. "When I ran the Tradition game stores in Sweden, Nick Landau and Titan Distributors were the go-to distributor for all of mainland Europe for sci-fi and stuff, so we've known each other a long time." Well, that's another interesting thing right there. It's apparently a distributor for mainland Europe for sci-fi books and stuff. So it is very much interesting, this cooperation between the two continents. And if you know more about this, I'm not an expert, do let me know in the comments down below how it works and how exactly it'll be distributed. If it goes to regular comic stores, it says in the article that it goes to comic book shops, but if you will be able to get this regularly and normally in Europe, because in my country we have never had American comic book issues coming out weekly in our shops, because, well, we don't have like regular comic book shops here. So I'm interested in that. Well, what I will do is probably get the comic book electronically so I can review it for you as soon as possible. All right, then. So the article continues. And we had entered the year before into an agreement where we would be publishing new Conan novels, books, short stories, ebooks through Titan for the English language. And so it was actually a very quick discussion with them where we needed to sort out the financial details, but they really wanted to come in heavily on our publishing plan, so we made an agreement with them very quickly, Malmberg explained. In the same interview, Zub explained what the series was about. We're not doing serialized in the sense that we're going to have Conan at the start of his career and then just every single moment from his early years into every single moment of his prime into the king. We are going to move around quite a bit, but there's going to be kind of these bigger, broader kind of stories that we're going to tell. Yes, you're going to tell enclosed stories within 6 issues each. It's usually what it's done, 6 to 12 issues, because it can be bound into a collected edition then very easily. So that's usually what has been being done with the American comics for a long time now. Conan's Life is a series of these kind of cool echoing patterns where things that happen to him in his younger days have an effect on him in his prime and potentially have an effect on him later, as the king. So he wanted to kind of explore that stuff, he elaborated. From there, Zab discussed how the story arcs jump around in Conan's life. The very first story is, I don't even think we've named the story arc yet, so I'm going to keep that close to my chest. But the stuff that happens in the first story arc is self-contained. It's an adventure that you can read and enjoy from start to finish. But then the second story, even though we jump ahead a little bit in the timeline, there's a connective tissue there, plot-wise. And the same thing will happen with our third story arc. So that proves what I've already said about the collected editions. That if you read the entire first year of Conan the Barbarian, the new series at Titan, you're going to get this really cool epic adventure. And it's all going to be kind of round out and be really, really enjoyable from start to finish. And yet, you can also reach kind of each arc on its own and not feel completely lost. That is sort of a nice demarcation point of, okay, a new adventure begins. If you've been reading along, you'll enjoy it. You'll know these bigger kind of picture things that we're doing, but you're not going to be left out in the cold if you haven't been reading the entire series, he proclaimed. Zeb would also be asked if there is a difference in restrictions under Titan and Marvel. He revealed that Marvel does indeed restrict the violence depicted in the Conan series. That's a shame. He explained, I don't think the Marvel book was necessarily restrictive in the sense that Marvel's got their broader kind of expectation in terms of violence that you can put on the page. The Titan's even looser in that way. It's much more like the classic Savage Sword. We've got violence in the book that I never would have been able to get away with at Marvel, right in the first issue. Yeah, and that's why I recommend people to read the European Conan, the Cimmerian. There's a lot of violence and gore there. The violence is intense. We're lopping off limbs. The women are absolutely stunning, he continued. It's pretty classic kind of pulp fantasy in that way. There's a big love and big violence and big everything. It is intense. I am intrigued more and more to read this comic book. And it continues. The official description for Conan the Barbarian issue 1 states, yes, after the Battle of Venarium, a weary Conan returns to his homeland to seek rest and solitude. However, a mysterious scout rides in to warn the Cimmerians of an imminent threat on the march from the Pictish wilderness. Will Conan and his new ally be able to hold off this new horde of invaders? The first issue will feature covers by Dan Penosian, Roberto de la Torre, Argerm, Patch Zurcher, Mike Mignola, I want that one, and EM Gist. Other covers include a wraparound Hyborian age map, a virgin foil Conan movie replica, and a blank sketch cover. See, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, like 1,000 different covers there. Well, we will see. So the first issue arrives in comic book stores on July the 26th, 2023. It will retail for $4. Yeah, well, so I will get it, I will read it, and I will review it for you. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. That'll be all. Thank you very much for watching. Ana Maria.